Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Town of Williston Development Review Board for Tuesday, October 26th, 2021. I am John Hamelgarn. I am Vice Chair of the DRB. I'll be chairing the meeting this evening. I welcome applicants and public participants. Please sign in by renaming yourself on the participant toolbar or commenting in the chat. This is a hybrid meeting taking place in the Town Hall meeting room and online using Zoom. All members of the board and the public can communicate in real time. Planning staff will provide Zoom instructions for public participation before the hearings are opened. All votes taken in this meeting that are not unanimous will be done by roll call vote in accordance with the law. If Zoom crashes, this meeting will be continued to, when is that, November
9th.
9th, thank you, Emily, 2021. Let's start the meeting by taking roll call attendance of all the DRB members participating in the meeting. Let's see. Pete Kelly is, I don't think, attending this evening. Not here. Scott Riley.
Yep, here.
Here. David Turner.
Here.
Paul Christensen.
Present.
Present. And finally, that would be David Saladino, is, I believe, also not present. So we have 4 members. That would be a quorum for this evening's meeting. So we have 2 items on tonight's docket, on tonight's agenda. We have the DP 2015, Kevin Mezuzin requesting a discretionary permit for 2-lot subdivision, and DP 20-13, Vermont Department of Buildings and General Services requesting a discretionary permit to construct a new public safety facility. The first item on the agenda is a public forum. Anyone who wishes to make a comment to the board this evening?
You want to let Emily go through that?
I will, thank you. Thank you, Scott. So, as I promised earlier, staff is going to give us a little tutorial on using Zoom for this meeting. Emily, take it away.
Yep, looks like everybody here should be familiar with Zoom. Sign in on the toolbar. If you are joining in on Zoom in the meeting room, keep your microphone, camera, and speaker off. There's several tools on the toolbar. Using your camera is optional. Please stay on mute when you're not speaking. The raise hand button is on the reaction section of the toolbar. You can use the chat for technical help. If you're joining in on telephone, press *9 to raise hand, *6 to mute or unmute. You can optimize view when we're doing screen share by toggling the toolbar or the slider bar in the center of the screen. And if you're having bad internet connection, try turning off video, closing other tabs or programs, or using your telephone as microphone, clicking the up arrow next to the microphone symbol. Reach out to me or Simon in the chat if you have any Zoom issues.
Thank you, Emily. So back to agenda item number 1, public forum. This is a time for anyone in the audience or online to comment on anything that is not on our agenda for this evening. Are there any comments? None here in the building. Emily, any hands raised there?
No raised hands, no chat.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to our public hearings. First item on the agenda is DP 20-15. Kevin Mezuzin requests a discretionary permit for a 2-lot subdivision on a 5.27 acre parcel to create 1 new dwelling unit at 1120 Butternut Road in the agricultural rural residential zoning district. We'll open this hearing at 7:05. So.
All right.
So I would ask, anybody representing the owner to come forward and sit at the table and identify yourself, name and address.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Mazuzin. I'm the owner of the property, 1120 Butternut Road, Williston, Vermont.
And Jesse Lauer, 1120 Butternut Road, Williston.
Okay, and is there anyone else that'll be speaking on your behalf this evening?
No.
Nope, thank you. All right, so staff?
Okay, so Kevin Mazuzin requests a discretionary permit for a 2-lot subdivision on a 5.27 acre parcel to create one new dwelling unit at 1120 Butternut Road in the agricultural rural residential zoning district. The property is currently developed with a single household dwelling. Staff is recommending the DRB approve this application with conditions as drafted. The Conservation Commission reviewed this project and made recommendations. The recommendations are discussed further on in the staff report. The Williston Fire Department reviewed the project and submitted comments. The Williston Department of Public Works and the Police Department did not submit comments. No comment letters were received at the time of mail out. So the proposed project went through pre-application in November 2019 and obtained growth management allocation of one dwelling unit in March of 2020. Due to COVID-19 state of emergency, the discretionary permit filing deadline was extended from November 2020 to September 2021. The applicant filed a complete discretionary permit application within that time frame. If the DRB approves this discretionary permit, the applicant is required to file final plans within 1 year after approval. Construction of a single household dwelling on the subdivided lot requires an administrative permit. The applicant has addressed all the pre-application recommendations satisfactorily in the staff's opinion, including comments made by the Conservation Commission and meeting with the Director of Public Works and the Fire Department Chief to clarify potential requirements. The project is in compliance with all dimensional standards, including minimum lot size, which in the ARZD is 80,000 square feet or 1.83 acres. And these proposed lots are 3.27 and 2 acres in size. And the lots each have more than 40 feet of frontage on Butternut Road. The parcel is less than 10.5 acres, so the proposed project is not subject to Williston's open space provisions. And the applicant's narrative addressed all elements regarding lots and home sites, and compliance is expected. The proposed project is estimated to generate 1 p.m. peak hour trip, and in pre-application, the DRB did not require a traffic study. The project proposes a new shared access location. Lot 1 and Lot 2 will be accessed from a drive by an approximately 420-foot long by 14.5-foot wide gravel drive with parking areas. The existing driveway for Lot 1 will be removed, and a right-of-way for the neighboring Howard parcel will remain in place. And then fire apparatus turnarounds will be provided at the driveway split and at both dwelling units. And there will be a pull-off between the driveway split and the existing dwelling unit on Lot 1. So the applicant has been having discussions with the Williston Public Works Director and the Williston Fire Department, and the project is expected to comply with their standards. The project is proposing an on-site wastewater system and potable water supply system, and the applicant has provided documentation of the state of Vermont wastewater permits. And the existing home has a 50-foot underground connection to the existing above-ground power located on the second of 2 existing poles on the parcel. And the proposed dwelling unit will have an underground connection to the first existing pole on the parcel. The project can comply with the on-site infrastructure requirements of Chapter 15 as proposed. So as far as density is concerned, residential density is calculated on a dwelling unit equivalent per acre basis. A dwelling unit equivalent is equal to a dwelling unit containing 2 or more bedrooms. A dwelling containing only 1 bedroom or less, a studio is counted as a half of a dwelling unit. And the applicant is proposing 2 total dwelling unit equivalents in the form of 2 units with 2 or more bedrooms and no units with 1 or fewer bedrooms. Chapter 19 density requires that lands with wetlands, wetland buffers, and slopes in excess of 30% be subtracted from the total acreage when calculating density, and that lands with slopes between 15 and 29.9% be calculated at a reduced density of 1 dwelling unit per 10 acres. There are no state map wetlands or wetland advisory areas on the subject parcel. And the engineer, the applicant's engineer confirmed this with a site visit. And based on the information provided, staff did a constraints analysis and determined that the parcel can support 2 dwelling units, rounding down from 2.33. And the applicant has proposed 2 dwelling units. For landscaping, Chapter 31 establishes minimum property line setbacks of 50 feet from the town highway right of way and 15 feet from the side and rear property lines. Chapter 23 states that open space residential developments provide ample buffers, but doesn't specify minimum buffer widths. So the DRB has some discretion in determining buffer widths for this project in this area. The applicant is proposing to use existing vegetation for the landscape buffers around each parcel. And then the Conservation Commission had a recommendation regarding that the existing driveway, once it's abandoned, also be restored to a forested condition. So this will also eventually provide a buffer from the road. The subject parcel is within a significant wildlife habitat area. The applicant has provided a habitat disturbance assessment. And the HDA concludes that the proposed project will not have an undue adverse impact to the significant wildlife habitat area. The project area is within a secondary foreground viewshed area. And WDB 27.9 directs the DRB to consider viewshed impacts and apply conditions of approval to mitigate those impacts as part of its review of the project. The site plan shows that the proposed new dwelling will be effectively screened from Butternut Road. To limit impacts to significant wildlife habitat and the viewshed, the Conservation Commission recommended that the applicant limit for the extent of forest clearing to the degree possible. Final plans should show defined building envelopes for lots 1 and lot 2, and no structures shall be allowed outside the building envelopes. And finally, at the time the proposed new shared driveway is completed and operational, the existing driveway serving lot 1 shall be abandoned and restored to a forested condition. And final plans also must provide details for how the restoration will be implemented. The WCC's recommendations are included as draft conditions. And the proposed project is not anticipated to impact rare, threatened, endangered species, unique natural communities, farmlands of local importance, or special flood hazard areas, wetlands, or streams. WDB 29.4 establishes runoff and erosion control standards for larger developments and development in vulnerable areas. A low-risk development is one in which the cumulative land disturbance is greater than 1/4 acre, but less than 2 acres, and in which all land that will be disturbed is outside water protection buffers, and has a slope of less than 8%. The proposed project is considered a low-risk development. As required, the applicant has submitted a completed runoff and erosion control checklist showing how the applicant will comply with the guidance provided in the current edition of Vermont's low risk site handbook for erosion prevention and erosion control, or sediment prevention and erosion control. The applicant has done so, and the project can comply with the standards of WDB 29.5. Impact fees will be assessed at the administrative permit stage. So that's all I have, and I've included some findings of fact, conclusions of law, and conditions of approval for you to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Melinda. So, Kevin, do you have anything to add, or like to tell us anything more about the project?
No, I don't have anything further to add at this point. I'm pleased with the staff report and the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and conditions of approval are all things that we are willing to take on.
Great. So you have read the conditions that are proposed?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. So I'll open it up, I guess, to the board members if there are any questions for the applicant. David? Paul?
No, he's done everything we asked for.
I'm good with it.
Okay. Looks like that's about it. Anybody in the audience? I'm pretty sure they're all here for the next. So, all right, so no more comments from the applicant, none from the board, none from the chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll close this hearing at 7:17. All right, so next up is DP 20-13, Vermont Department of Buildings and General Services. CO Jennifer Fitch requests a discretionary permit to construct a new public safety facility, garage and storage building, and parking at 3294 St. George Road in the Gateway Zoning District South. I'll open this hearing at 7:18 and ask the applicant to identify themselves, name and address, please.
This is Ole Barbath. I'm a project manager with Building and General Services for this project.
My name is Scott Homestead. I'm a civil engineer with Krebs and Lansing Consulting Engineers.
Marty Sienkiewicz from SAS Architects.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the name.
Marty Sienkiewicz,
Okay, thank you.
SAS Architects. Yeah.
Jeremy Stevens, BGS. Good evening.
I'm Captain Mike Manley, Vermont State Police.
All right, anybody else? Anybody else in the audience want to identify themselves? No, that's all right. I know the man behind that mask. Who's got this one? Is that you, Matt? Melinda's got this. A big night for Melinda.
Yeah, so if you'll bear with me, this has a lot of elements to it, so it may take a while to get through, but I want to make sure we cover everything. So the Vermont Department of Buildings and General Services, care of Jennifer Fitch, requests a discretionary permit to construct a new public safety facility. Wait, I have not shared my screen. I apologize. Okay. A new public safety facility, garage, storage building, and parking at 3294 St. George Road in the Gateway Zoning District South. The staff is recommending the DRB take testimony and close the hearing, deliberate, and approve the project, but only if the DRB can issue specific findings and recommendations regarding landscape buffer, lighting, in particular, the timing of lighting, and the monopole antenna. So these are elements of the project that the applicant has a partial exemption under Chapter 4 and under 4413. And the applicant is claiming a partial exemption. And we will be discussing that further along. The DRB may decide in the end that you need more information to be provided by the applicant before you can issue a decision. So as far as the project history, the DRB reviewed the proposed project as a pre-application on October 22nd, 2019. And there were prior approvals dating back to the 1970s, and some site reconnaissance and clearing happened starting from 2011 and going up to 2019. The Conservation Commission and the Historic and Architectural Advisory Committee each reviewed this project. The HAC's recommendations primarily focus on reducing impacts from lighting. They also commented on building materials and colors, the security fence, wayfinding signage, and the communications tower. The Conservation Commission has specific recommendations related to watershed protection buffers, a trail easement, invasive species management, and lighting. The HAC and WCC recommendations are discussed in the staff report and included. Some of their recommendations have been included as draft conditions. The Department of Public Works and the Fire Department both commented on this project. And we received two public comment letters at the time of the mail out. Concerns were raised about noise and lighting impacts. Comment letters were received from Nathan Degas and Larry Reed. So the DRB had a number of pre-application recommendations, and I'm not going to go through them all. The applicant responded to pretty much all of those recommendations. And you can feel free to, go back to that and hit on specific ones if you need further clarification about the applicant's responses. So in our WDB Chapter 4, there is an exemption from local permitting. Facilities owned and operated by the state of Vermont have a partial exemption from the use requirements under state and local regulations as provided by 24 VSA 4413 and WDB 4.2.2.1. The town is specifically authorized to regulate height, lighting, and other development elements such that it doesn't interfere with the intended functional use, and the burden of demonstrating that a condition imposed on a partially exempted development interferes with the intended functional use rests with the applicant. So the DRB will be looking at this this partial exemption and will need to decide if the applicant has met their burden of proof on areas or elements of the project that they wish to claim this exemption for. So for dimensional standards or for uses, the proposed use is public administration, which is allowed, and it's allowed under NAACI's Code 92 and also allowed under 4413 and the Williston Development Bylaw Chapter 4. For dimensional standards, there's no minimum lot size in the Gateway Zoning District South. there is a requirement to have 40 feet of frontage on a public or private road. The subject parcels in compliance. The applicant's proposing construction of a new public safety facility consisting of 2 structures, a main office building and a garage storage building. 2 parking areas are proposed, a public parking lot to the south and an employee parking lot to the north. The site plan demonstrates compliance with respect to building height restrictions and property line setbacks. The applicant is proposing an 85-foot tall monopole antenna, which doesn't comply with the 36-foot height restriction. However, an exemption may apply if the DRB finds the applicant has met the burden of proof, demonstrating the need for an 85-foot pole. This is discussed further under the telecommunications section that follows. Outdoor sales and storage. The applicant's proposing an outdoor storage area to the west of the main building and parking areas where larger equipment, trucks, and trailers will be stored. The storage building and outdoor storage will be surrounded by a security fence with a locked gate. WDB Chapter 34 allows service vehicles to be kept in parking areas that are in a side or rear yard, buffered as required by Chapter 23 and in compliance with Chapter 14. Chapter 34 has specific provisions related to development on hillsides. The intent is to maintain the appearance of a wooded hillside south of I-89, including standards for maintaining existing forest, landscaping, and building on hillsides. The WDB 34 requires the clearing of wooded or forest areas in the Gateway Zoning District South with an average slope of more than 3% will be limited to 35% of the area of the parcel that's within the Gateway Zoning District South. The remainder of the site must remain in woodland or forest vegetation, except for certain exceptions, like small lawn areas around buildings. The applicant calculated the cleared area percentage at 35.2%, and they've indicated that they will revegetate at least 0.06 acres in order to achieve compliance with the standard. Landscaping details, including the required 75-foot woodland buffer planting, are provided on sheet L 1.0. So Chapter 34 calls for the removal of scrub forest on the north side of the development site and its replacement with a 75-foot buffer of mixed hardwood and evergreen forest, as well as the retention of a 75-foot wide strip of existing forested vegetation north of the planted buffer. And the proposed plan complies with this standard. For access, the site access is via a planned new private access road being constructed as part of a separate project, the V-Trans Park and Ride. The V-Trans Park and Ride is being permitted on a separate but parallel track to this project. V-Trans conducted a traffic study for the Park and Ride, which included the estimated trips generated by the BGS facility, which is discussed in section 3.2, page 11 through 16 of the traffic impact study report, which we didn't provide in your packet, but we did upload to the website. The traffic impact study estimated that the BGS facility would generate 40 p.m. peak hour trips. The traffic forecasts in the feasibility study were based on 95 daytime employees anticipated for the proposed public safety and V-Trans facilities. And the current estimates are 70 employees. So the report concludes that the anticipated traffic volume increases associated with the proposed development are minor. For off-street parking and loading, the vehicular parking proposed complies as proposed. The proposed use is rather unique, and the state is partially exempt from zoning, so staff does recommend approving the 86 parking spaces. There is not, when usually we have a parking analysis with the use indicated and based on Table 14A of the bylaw, which specifies required parking based on different uses, but this use is actually not included in that table in Chapter 4. So it's kind of at the discretion of the DRB to determine the allowed parking. The staff does think that the amount of parking is pretty reasonable given the use. The applicant's proposing 86 parking spaces, 36 public parking spaces, including 3 ADA spaces and 50 employee parking spaces and 1 additional ADA space. The parking lot design, landscaping dimensions, ADA, bicycle parking all comply with the standards of WDB 14. It's only the number of vehicular spaces that would need an exemption from WDB 14A. The proposed number of ADA spaces are sufficient for the number of parking spaces, but the DRB may wish to require the spaces be apportioned more evenly, as in 2 parking spots per 2 ADA spaces per lot. And the bicycle parking and end of trip facilities also comply as proposed. 4 short-term spaces are proposed near the main public entrance. 4 long-term spaces are identified in the storage building, and a minimum of 2 end of trip facilities are required. And sheet A-1 shows 3 bathrooms with showers. The DRB can choose to reduce the bicycle parking, but given that VTrans access road will include a pedestrian connection under exit 12, staff doesn't recommend reducing the bicycle parking because bicycle use is likely. For on-site infrastructure, proposed utilities include new electric and communication services, a new water line and hydrant, new municipal sewer connections to both buildings, and stormwater collection, treatment, and detention system. All utility lines and connections must be underground. Water connection fees will apply. And then the Department of Public Works requested in a comment memo that the water main be extended to the end of the parking lot so a hydrant can be installed for flushing. And this will also allow future taps off the main if necessary. And they also requested that both buildings be metered for water usage. On-site stormwater treatment and retention facilities are shown in 2 locations on the stormwater and site restoration plan. The project will require state stormwater permit and must comply with state standards as well as Williston Public Works standards. Waste and recycling receptacles are shown to the north of the outdoor storage yard. Per WDB 16, solid waste disposal containers must be accessible to haulers, but must also be fully screened from public view. This can be accomplished by architectural and/or landscape design. Designated snow storage areas are shown on the site plan. Per WDB 23.5.3, salt tolerant plant materials must be used in or around parking areas and in the snow storage areas required by WDB 16.6. And plant materials selected for these areas must also have a growth form that is not subject to or that resists the physical damage that can be caused by snow moving equipment and stacking the snow. For telecommunication facilities, the applicant is requesting a partial exemption from zoning. The project includes an 85 to 90 foot tall monopole antenna for police and public safety radio communications. It will not be permitted through the Vermont Public Utility Commission, and therefore it's subject to the standards of WDB Chapter 21, including the height limit of 36 feet. The applicant has provided supplemental documentation, a microwave path survey report documenting the on-the-ground conditions that necessitate an 85-foot antenna. The HAC made a recommendation about co-location. The HAC noted that the town is looking to build a similar communications tower and recommended the state discuss co-locating with the town manager and relevant town departments. But the HAC also recognized that co-location is somewhat beyond the scope of the DRB. The DRB can require the applicant to provide a commitment to share space on the antenna per WDB 21.3.1. The DRB will need to determine whether the report the applicant provided satisfies the applicant's burden of proof to allow an exemption to the 36-foot height limit. The DRB may also want to consider a condition requiring the applicant to design for future co-location per WDB 21.3.1. Co-location of telecommunication facilities is required. The antenna must meet the standards for the design and color of telecommunication structures per WDB 21.3.2. Being the exterior materials must be of a type and color and style that minimizes glare and contrast with surrounding environment. For design review, the HAC recommendations are included as conditions and detailed in a separate report resulting from their review. Much of the HAC's comments relate to site lighting and are included under the lighting section of the staff report. The other recommendations include that the chain link security fence and gates shall be black or green vinyl coated and not plain galvanized, where visible from the access drive, employee parking area, and public parking area. The plain galvanized fence around the storage building is okay because it will not be visible to the general public. The applicant shall provide roofing and siding color samples for the DRB to review and approve. I believe they've already done that. And HAC recommended subtle earth tones that blend the building into the forested hillside. They feel that the light beige may contrast too much with the forest and the trees. Final plans shall include wayfinding signage that differentiates the employee-only entrance from the public entrance. And so the DRB should review these recommendations and decide if additional conditions are required. For landscaping, WDB Table 23A does not list standards for this type of development, and the landscaping is partially regulated under WDB 34.8. The east side of the property fronts a public way and is proposed to be landscaped by by VTrans during the construction of the park and ride access drive. The south side of the property is a primary concern with regard to a landscape buffer to reduce impacts of light and noise from the site to nearby residences. The applicants provided a landscaping plan shown on sheet L-1. So we've already talked about the 75-foot wide planted woodland buffer for the north side of the property. A type 4 formal planting buffer is proposed to be planted in the lawn area north and south of the public safety building and along the southern edge of the development. Landscaped islands are proposed for the parking areas. The applicant's proposing a buffer of densely planted arborvitae along the southern boundary of the property. An earthen berm is shown on the site plan at the southeast corner of the property to further screen the development from the abutting property, but this will be completed by VTrans when the access road's constructed. A comment letter requested that the applicant, that the landscape buffer along the southern boundary be extended about 50 feet along the western edge of the storage yard to reduce impacts of lighting from the nearby residential areas. The DRB may wish to include this as a condition. The DRB should discuss the landscape buffer on the south side of the development. If this use is categorized as retail service commercial, then according to table 23A, either a 13-foot type 2 buffer or a 27-foot type 3 buffer would be required. The applicant should provide more detailed landscape plans showing how compliance will be achieved along the southern boundary. The Williston Conservation Commission reviewed this project for impacts to conservation areas, and the WCC's recommendations are included as draft conditions. The subject parcel is within a significant wildlife habitat area. The applicant has submitted a habitat disturbance assessment. The proposed development is sited so as to minimize disturbance to the significant wildlife habitat area. The subject parcels within the secondary foreground viewshed area. but the Gateway zoning district south has specific requirements related to view shed, which have already been discussed in the section under the Gateway zoning district south above. And the parcel doesn't contain any other types of natural resources like threatened, uncommon, rare, threatened, or endangered species, unique natural communities, farmlands of local importance, or special flood hazard areas. The Williston Conservation Commission reviewed the project for impacts to watershed health, and their recommendations are included as draft conditions. Class 2 and Class 3 wetlands are shown on the site plan. Class 2 wetlands are outside the area of development. The Conservation Commission submitted recommendations related to the demarcation and protection of watershed protection buffers. This development is considered a high-risk development, and the applicant has submitted an erosion prevention and sediment control plan that complies with the standards of WDB 29.5. Department of Public Works had a number of comments related to stormwater, and their comment memo is attached and included as draft conditions. For outdoor lighting, the applicant is requesting a partial exemption for the public parking lot. The applicant has provided a lighting plan shown on sheet ES.1L as discussed in the table below. All proposed fixture types comply and are fully shielded. Total lumen outputs, parking lot illumination levels, maximum uniformity ratios, luminaire orientation all comply with the requirements of WDB 24. There are a few areas near the building entrances where the illumination at a single point exceeds the 5-foot candle threshold, but the DRB can allow illumination levels above the maximum around building entrances and pedestrian ways. The lighting on the north side of the vehicle storage building is proposed to be mounted at 17 feet, which exceeds the maximum allowed height of 15 feet. But the DRB may allow an exception to the standard where the pole and luminaire assemblies are more than 250 feet from the nearest parcel boundary, which applies here. WDB Chapter 24 has limits on the duration outdoor lighting can be turned on. Typically 24/7 sites that operate 24/7 are required to dim their parking lot lights 75% overnight and use motion sensors for security lighting. The applicant submitted a memo requesting that outdoor lighting be permitted to remain on all the time for public safety reasons. The hack also discussed the lighting. My apologies. The hack made recommendations that state that the lighting shall be dimmed to 75%, not by 75% from dusk to dawn. So that's under their first recommendation on lighting. And illuminated to 100% during shift changes and when activated by employee entrances, access gate, and/or motion. Lighting shall be programmed to turn off no more than 15 minutes following the last detectable motion. And then the public parking area and the Sallyport area, lighting in this area can remain on 24/7 without dimming as to not interfere with the intended functional use of a 24/7 publicly accessible facility where troopers might interact with distressed individuals and/or take police reports in the parking lot and evidence and/or people are taken into custody in the Sallyport area. And then the storage area shall be dimmed to 75% during night hours and activated to 100% by motion sensors programmed to turn off no more than 15 minutes following the last detectable motion. And then finally, there's 2 pole-mounted fixtures on the south side of the public parking lot. And the hack is recommending that they be shielded on the south side. And actually, the DRB may want to include a condition that requires all the pole-mounted fixtures near the southern boundary be shielded on the south side. So the DRB will need to decide whether the applicant is satisfied its burden of proof to allow an exemption to the lighting standards. Okay, so this is just the lighting table. So for signs, signage is proposed and can be approved with administrative permits. The applicant's proposing one freestanding sign at the entrance of the site. Maximum size allowed is 32 square feet. Maximum allowed height is 12 feet. The base must be landscaped, and internally illuminated signs are prohibited. Additionally, no permit is required for the placement of posting of up to 4 directional signs that have an area of less than 2 square feet and do not include a logo larger than 1/2 square feet or a commercial message. And these smaller directional signs are not counted against the permitted number or area of signs, but must comply with the individual sign standards of Table 25A. More than 4 smaller directional signs may be allowed by administrative permit at the discretion of the administrator. Lastly, impact fees. The assessment of impact fees will be determined by the administrator. And that is all I have. Thank you.
To the applicant to perhaps this is a fairly big project, so it might be useful to give us a little bit of a tour of the site, if that's something that we could put up on the screen. And you know, for example, it's not immediately apparent where the monopole is on the site plan, so I think it'd be good to kind of point out some of those major elements here and how you're looking to you know, light and screen the site.
Sure. I'm a little unclear how to do it on the screen.
Well, I am as well. I mean,
Melinda, perhaps if you could share the site plan?
of course, you guys can't.
I've got it pulled up.
I can see it from here.
Okay, okay,
So I can describe it.
okay.
Site plan you have to.
Yeah, Melinda, can you put the site plan up and
I would
kind
go
of
down
zoom in a
one
little
more.
bit?
Melinda, if you could go to C2, that's a little more zoomed in and it shows the whole site. There you go. So I can do my best to describe it. So essentially, as Melinda discussed, the project will share and access with the V-Trans Park and Ride on the south end of the site. And essentially, vehicles will come in and turn right to go to the parking ride and to our lower parking lot, the employee parking lot. And then public users will basically go in straight from Route 2A into the site where the public parking is, and then through a gated access to get to the storage building and those facilities. The public safety building is then directly to the north of the public parking. We are taking advantage of the hillside here to have, you know, essentially a walkout building where, you know, the one level is on the public parking and then you'd be down a full story on the north side facing the employee parking. The monopole that we're talking about is on, I would describe it as just off the northwest corner of the closest wing of the building towards the lower parking lot.
It does say new antenna.
Yeah, it does. I want to make sure that everybody that's watching here is aware of what we're looking
So
at.
there is, exactly, so there is a label there that says new antenna.
There, okay.
And so I know that's a concern.
So she's
You know,
got-
other particular site features that people might be wondering where they are the 2 stormwater treatment practices, our gravel wetlands. One is off to the northwest corner past the storage building and that parking, and one is directly north of what we're calling the lower parking lot, the employee parking lot, back towards where the park and ride is going to be. So I know those are the things that came up during discussion. Was there other things that people wanted to sort of know where they are?
So public access is on the south side of the building, right across from the public parking. The Sally Port is off to the west side. Basically, it faces the storage building.
So that is through the gate into
They go through the gate.
through the gate into the,
Keep bearing to the right and come right in the west side of the
come
building.
around the back, okay.
And then the lower parking lot is basically for the 911 call-in center and employee parking.
That'll be gated access as well.
That'll be gated access.
Right, so again, it might be useful, and I realize you're working in tandem with the, I'm not sure who, is that you, Simon, that's drawing on here? Nicely
I
done.
think he's got it.
Yeah, is to just kind of maybe outline where the fence is and where the gates are. I think that's, because we've been talking about fencing here and screening and whatnot, so.
So, the first gate, if you look at this, public parking area up on the south side, and you see where it says new concrete curb in the middle of the parking lot, it's just to the left of that. And you can kind of see where the fence comes along the south side of the property in front of the, behind the storage building parking, and then turns north and goes across, and then comes along. It's in the general area where that Sally Port is, John.
Mm-hmm.
Simon's just outlined the gates in green, that's accurate.
Yep. And the other gated access is to that lower parking lot, as we're calling it. It's the second access off from the V-Trans Park and Ride Road, Loop Road.
When is the park and ride plan to start construction?
We are very close to taking in permits on the park and ride. And as I understand it, the curb cut and access to this facility is part of the park and ride project. So,
I think they want to start clearing this winter, obviously before.
For the park and ride?
So we'll be seeing that application soon.
you've already seen it.
already permitted,
You've
right?
seen the discretionary permit, and amendment on the park and ride. They've filed final plans and are in process with the administrative permit. So you won't see it, but you have.
We have seen it.
Yeah.
They're slightly ahead of us.
Yeah, they're about one step.
Not for long.
Yes.
Which facility is scheduled to be completed first? Park and ride?
It's definitely sort of a parallel path. I think there's a very good chance the construction will be occurring on both at the same time.
So is the access road going to be built in its entirety, top and bottom, at once?
We haven't really compared their schedules. Our hopes are that they get this curb cut in for us, and if they don't have it built, we'll have to work with them on getting our construction vehicles in while they finish their road.
I assume your plan is to bring if they don't have it built, then you're gonna be bringing it on the south entrance.
We're gonna have to build an access road through their curb cut area to get into the building. But we've been in communication with them, and our hopes are that they get this built for us, or roughed in, so we can use it for construction vehicles.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting, I'm looking at the plan here, at the south entrance to the parking lot, it doesn't look like the driveways line up right there on this plan that I
It's a
have.
bit of an offset entry and that was to stay away from a stream buffer. There's a small stream just off the property to the south. And so we had to tweak our entry over to address that.
So which of these is accurate?
It's accurate, but it's just, it doesn't look like, it's not a perpendicular T.
Okay,
So the south side comes in at an angle?
Correct.
Yeah.
so the curve on the access road is gonna kind of come around and meet up with the, yeah, I'm not sure how that's actually working, to be honest with you. The plan I'm looking at, they're offset by probably 10 or 12 feet.
I'm not sure where you're talking, John.
I'm looking at this, actually, it's the north, I guess it's the north access point, not the south, I'm sorry.
Well, this is south, isn't it?
The south at the bottom, so I'm looking at the one in the north, the lower lot entrance.
Well, we don't-
The employee parking lot.
I see perhaps a very small offset, which we'll fix.
Okay, I'm looking, well,
It's-
I'm looking on it, sheet L1, maybe that's an older.
Oh, that could be.
Yep, that would do it. Never mind. You might want to adjust the landscape plan.
They're always the last to know.
They are the last to know. You're absolutely right. That serves me right for looking at the landscape plan.
C1 seems to line up.
Yeah, so, all right, yeah, we've straightened that
Sorry about
out,
that.
so to speak. So I think I'd like to hit straight up here a couple of the issues that staff brought up. Let's talk about the monopole. I think it's important here that, my understanding is that we're trying to establish that it's necessary for the functional intended use of the facility for us to kind of allow this exemption. I think that's the way I read the rules here. So you've submitted a report saying that you need an 85-foot pole. Is that right?
It came from a company called Comcast. I think, yeah, ComCheck. ComCheck, I'm sorry, ComSearch.
ComSearch it is.
Yep.
And so
They
they,
microwave path survey from our pole or our site to both Camp Johnson and Mount Mansfield.
I see,
And that's what we have to have communication to.
all right. And are there requirements of how close to this building that pole needs to be?
I believe so. I believe it has to be within 15 feet is the number.
Actually, it's 10.
It's 10.
Okay.
So how tall was the pole down at the existing facility, down at the bottom of the hill?
Captain Manley, do you know the answer to that?
Sorry, Zoe, I don't have the exact measurement. I can get it. It's a pretty substantial tower as well.
I think the information actually shows up in your report somewhere that it's close to the same size, about 85 feet.
Yeah, I thought it was.
That roughly sounds right.
So I guess my question is, I mean, how well does that pole work down there? How well does it's got, I assume it's got a microwave antenna on top of it.
I think the issue here that they state in their report are allowing for the growth of some of the trees in the area and maintaining that line of sight.
Is the dish down at the bottom of the hill pointed at Camp Johnson?
Both Camp Johnson and Mansfield.
And Mansfield. Dave Turner, feel free to weigh in here. You're the expert. I have.
You're asking the questions.
I'm not an expert. I'm simply going by what seems reasonable.
No, those are great reasonable questions, yes.
So my question is, you've got a pole, an 85-foot pole thereabouts down at the bottom of the hill, which is significantly lower, pointed at Camp Johnson and pointed at the Mount Mansfield. You gain a huge amount of elevation going up that hill. You've got the same size pole. So it seems to me that you don't need that tall a pole, at least to point to Camp Johnson, because you're way above the line of sight. I don't know about Mansfield, because there's probably a hill in the way.
And again, I'm not an expert on it, but.
No, but you're asking for an exemption, and you're here as the expert.
We submitted a report from.
I understand you did.
ComSearch.
So, just because you submitted it doesn't make it,
I would say, Paul.
So, hold on a second.
Oh, sorry.
So David, help me out here. What do you think?
Well, I see where you're heading with it. Going up the hill, the elevation, how to be able to hit Camp Johnson at a lower height of the pole. So
it's going to stick out like a sore thumb.
It's going to stick out like a sore thumb because it's probably about 40 feet higher than the building. But I've also looked at some of the other ones they had at the other facilities, and they weren't that bad looking. So, but I don't know what the heights of those were at the St. Albans and the other Barrett. So I don't know what the heights of those are, but it will stick out. These people, ComSearch did the study, so if they say there's stuff in the plane of the microwave path, they're the ones that would know.
Okay.
Usually you have someone actually come and do a study like that to tell you what potential things are in the way of your path to the other facility.
Are you familiar with ComSearch, Dave?
I have not used ComSearch before, no.
So there's other features that could be in the way, hills.
Yes.
That will interrupt this facility, and trees that wouldn't be in that line of sight down in the valley that may be up on this hillside. or other hillsides that are in that path.
Okay.
I had similar concerns, in that I'm looking at the profile that's here, and it would seem to indicate that there are some obstacles much closer to the Williston site, or Winooski. Why they have to be so similar, I don't know in this case, but the Winooski site that you need to get kind of up and over. But it seems like if that were the case, then you'd have a problem at the other site here in Williston as well. But apparently it seems to be working. So I'm going to stick with Scott's question of I'm not sure what's different. I mean, here versus, I don't even know what the elevation difference is. It's looks to be maybe.
Do you know what you guys know what the elevation, the base elevation for the footprint of the proposed building versus the elevation down at the existing barracks? Any idea?
I don't, but I agree with you that the site is certainly much higher than that, but I would second Zoli's comment that site doesn't have, mature trees, and I highly suspect that that's a lot of the reasoning behind the height of the pole.
Okay.
We just need to make sure we have the shortest pole we need to make for your necessary use.
And there was a note in the staff report that said that let's see here, that you're not seeking, I'm going to get this wrong, you're not seeking approval from the regulatory authority. I don't see it right in front of me, but
Public utility?
yeah, the utility.
Yeah, the Vermont Public Utility Commission.
And the reason for that is why?
I think it's because it's not a public utility. It's a.
Okay, that's not a public utility, all right. Yep, that makes sense, I guess.
Are there any issues that would preclude sharing this pole with, as suggested in the staff report?
If you're suggesting sharing it with town, police, fire, or town need, I don't think there is. Jeremy, you want to speak to that? I think all we need is a letter requesting what you guys would need. Obviously, there's security issues getting into this site. That lower parking lot is a secure parking lot. So.
Well, we are actively, looking for co-location opportunities. We currently co-locate on the existing tower as well. So we're planning on continuing that process. But it's the same as, everything else. The state likes to wave that 4413 letter around, and, as long as it doesn't interfere with the operations of the facility, shouldn't be an issue. And as long as the tower has the capacity, of course.
Okay. So you've seen the condition of approval here that requires you to cooperate in that respect, I believe.
And in the current location, it's co-located?
There are leads.
Yeah.
And we're researching all of those right now, seeing if they do want to co-locate.
But the existing one has co-location on it?
The existing one has others, yes.
Okay.
Good.
So I believe as part of one of the conditions, you're asking us for a letter stating that. And I think we gotta be careful how we word that letter. And it meets your needs. I mean,
Right.
as long as it doesn't interfere with the security and the operation of this facility. The 911 call-in center, the dispatching of police vehicles, and I don't believe we're gonna have an issue with it.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
This is Dave Turner. Do you currently have public cell service on the tower at the lower facility?
Yep, this is Mike Manley. We have VTEL, AT&T, Verizon, and the Jericho Fire Department are on the current tower, along with us, obviously.
Yep. So you plan on bringing the cell service providers to the new tower too?
That'll be contractual, probably, more with BGS. Jeremy, do you have input on that?
Yeah, we're trying to work with them right now in terms of, what comes first, the chicken or the egg. We gotta get agreements in place and understand what they need in terms of design. So we're working through that there, yes.
If they want to.
Right.
So we don't even know if they want to at this point.
Correct. So, I think I found, the language in the development bylaw says that a binding letter of commitment to share space must accompany the application for a permit for the facility. So that would.
BGS doesn't have an issue with the way that's worded. And, once we get past this phase, the Attorney General's office will develop that letter for us.
Excellent. Thank you. I want to kind of, let's work through it. Paul or Dave, do you have any other additional questions on the poll?
The only thing I have on the poll is, will it be a painted color or galvanized color, or like the ones on top of Mount Mansfield are required to be a specific color to blend in with the skyline? So are you planning to do anything specific with the pole there?
Marty, I believe we were going with a colored pole, correct? And that's what we've done at other.
Yeah, we can put any finish that is desired on the pole. And I agree, it should be painted to match the skyline.
Yeah.
Absolutely, in a dull finish, with no glare.
So, what color, what color?
He said to match the sky.
Match the sky.
Right. Is it on a sunny or a cloudy day?
Mostly.
Well, there's a lot of studies that have been done about that color, and I think that, for example, a lot of the big windmill towers that you're seeing now have studied that a lot, and I think that their color does a good job in matching the generally overcast skies that we see here. So I'm thinking it's that kind of light gray color.
Yeah.
The pole will be painted.
Yes. So it'll be painted, and I assume that that's a color that'll be submitted with the final application as well.
Yes.
We can do that.
So, Paul, did you have anything you wanted to ask about the poll?
One thing I was gonna ask about the pole is, would the higher pole improve the cell service down the interstate?
I would say only if there's any cell providers that are sharing that pole.
It'll improve it at my house too, but that's not a cause of concern.
So let's talk about one of the other items that came up here, which was the lighting and the lighting control sequence. The hack made some very specific suggestions, recommendations, and I'd like to hear how you feel about those suggestions.
We actually went through it with them. This map that's on here between the blue, green, and red.
Yep.
We're okay with.
Okay.
The other conditions are fine, with the exception of what Melinda had mentioned about the dimming levels. Those fixtures will be reduced to 75%, not by 75%. So the lighting level
I was gonna ask you about that, because that's not the way it's written, so it's.
Well, that's not the way, that was
Yeah.
typo or something, I don't know how that.
So those should be, they dimmed to 75%?
Correct, not by 75%.
So if it was 100-foot candles, when they dim, they'll be at 75-foot candles?
Correct. That's good, okay. Captain Manley, you're okay with that, right?
Yes, sir. Yep, that sounds good. If we stick to the map that we agreed upon.
Yep, yeah, I'm trying to make sure that we all are understanding the same thing
We
at
went
the
through
same
this
time.
document as a team before we came here, and that's a red flag that came out to all of us, that they were being reduced.
Okay.
So, can I ask a question? Matt, and in this case, all light fixtures are shielded and downcast?
That's correct.
So they would have to abide by the light fixture requirements we have in town?
Correct. So what we're trying to do for you in the staff report is identify any places where you know, where you would be allowing anything different under the 4413 exemption, but otherwise, proposal is for things to be in compliance with town bylaws.
And so then I follow up on a question on that, where there's a suggestion here that we include a condition that requires all the pole-mounted fixtures near the southern boundary to be shielded. My understanding is that all the fixtures typically are downward facing and shielded, is that?
That's correct. Sometimes you can add some additional horizontal shielding, so that if somebody is, you know, really close to a light, even if they're standing down from where that fixture is mounted, so someone on level ground who's looking up at the fixture from off property, you know, they're still going to perceive that a light is on. Sometimes that can be mitigated by some additional shielding on that side. So I think that was the root of that
So on the back side of the
back side of the light,
backwards facing, okay. Which would be towards the residential uses,
Correct.
South of the site here in this case.
Correct.
Okay. There are some spots where you exceed the maximum allowable. Can you kind of go over where those are and why they need to exceed the 5.2 foot candles?
It's overlap of lighting at our entries.
I'm sorry, but
Did you see the?
I have, but,
It's essentially
Zoe,
occurring-
you know my age approximately, and
I think it's essentially occurring where the lights at the doors are also being impacted by lights from the parking, and so you get an addition of light just at those few localized spots.
So I see, is that a 9.3 there by the main public entrance?
I didn't bring my readers.
Yeah.
They're cheating. Yes, that is John. That is the main public entry right there, the 9.3.
All right, and I guess I would ask Melinda whether in your review of this, where you found any that weren't near public entrances?
No, they were all like right around the entrances and where the sidewalks are, and in the lighting chapter, it does say that the DRB can approve that.
Excellent. All right.
It can be a little bit brighter around entrances and pedestrian ways.
Was there any thought or modeling done, given the fact that this site is is a cut and fill site? Was there any thought about driving up the hill and looking and being able to, what are you going to see in terms of light bleed or light? You know, I'm back on the unshielded or downcast lights, but seeing as how you're coming up the hill, anybody looked at that at all?
I think as part of the V-Trans project is really where that's most affected, and they did propose a landscape berm at the top of the hill with additional plantings to help screen those property owners.
Screening their lights, or you're screening your lights on their property?
No, that would be for the cars specifically, but our lighting plan shows the lighting levels all going to 0 before the property line.
Okay, all right. Yeah, okay.
Good. To the other board members, any other questions on the lighting issues that have been brought up?
Nope.
Nope.
The only question I have is, I saw the mention of the poles being 17 feet. Are all the poles gonna be 17 feet, or just specific, or a couple? Like the employee parking, are those poles 17 feet too, or 15 feet?
I believe all the poles are 17 feet.
Is there a spec for that? As you know, if the Williston's bylaw is 15 and you're at 17, there must be a reason why you're doing that.
It's uniformity with a lesser number of fixtures. If we drop down to 15 feet, we need to add more fixtures to get the uniformity levels that we need.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. And Matt, there's a rule that says if you're so far from the edge of the property line that they can be higher.
I believe do have something like that.
You covered, I think you covered that.
That was mentioned.
That was it, that's in the staff
Yeah.
notes.
Good. So then so the last topic that was brought up was the landscaping. And I guess I would ask a question first, which was I would like a little context on, Melinda, your statement that says, if this is a certain use, then a type, I think it was a type 2 buffer was required. Is there a question about the use here and whether that's going to impact what kind of buffer is required by the WDB?
Is that a question for you asking me?
Yes, I'm asking
Yeah.
someone to provide that context of why there was a if statement in there.
Yeah, so similar to the parking analysis, the uses listed in the landscaping chapter are not applicable to the current situation. Like when looking at those uses, normally you're looking at uses between the subject property, what's the use of the subject property, and what's the use of the abutting property. But in this case, there wasn't a use listed for the subject property that matches this use. It's like the closest one that I could find was retail commercial, and that's not really what this is. So that's like, so if you were to use retail commercial as the use, then it would require the 13-foot, I think it was type 2, let's see, what's that? But I think really it's up to the DRB to kind of think about the context of this particular use and what kind of buffer should be required to mitigate impacts to the abutting properties, particularly on the south side. Really on the south side, we're talking about. And really what you'd like to see there. I mean, they've shown the row of arborvitae there, and do you think anything more is needed to buffer the sound and the lights?
Right, and I guess that would be the question I have for the applicant then, is to explain your thinking of what you're trying to accomplish and how you think you're getting there.
Huh. I don't know. Marty, do you have a better understanding of the landscape plan? Perhaps, I mean, I can talk about it a little bit. I mean, we have the row of screening next to the property line and then larger trees right off the parking lot. And, certainly, the buffer from the adjoining property line to the parking is, far exceeds any of these numbers we're talking about. It's more like, 40 to 50 feet in most cases.
Right, it's usually, though, there's a density of planting that's involved with the different types, and I have to admit that I don't know the specifics of each of those, like Matt does.
But same boat.
So, Matt, what is being proposed with the row of arborvitae, which is a dense hedge, which I assume is how tall? Going to be?
Talking about 6 feet.
They're only 6 feet tall?
To start. And I don't think the other thing is, I don't think we're proposing to clear cut this area either. I think there'll be, additional, natural vegetation that's made.
Yeah, from looking at the landscaping plan, it seemed like there was like a tree line on the southern edge, but it was hard to interpret.
Yeah, the hedge is to supplement that, not to replace the natural vegetation that's there.
Okay, I mean, that's not what I'm actually seeing here. I'm seeing a thick hedge of arborvitae, which I understand is meant to screen. Mm-hmm. It starts at 6 feet, you're saying, is when planted, and they can grow quite tall depending on what kinds of that you're putting in. And then it says that there's a native wildflower and grass seeding area between there and the parking lot with some trees along the edge of the parking lot. So it does appear that I don't see any notes that say that the the existing trees are to remain.
Okay.
But now's the time to
Well,
tell me I'm not seeing that
I think we
correctly.
can clarify that on our final plans, because there's stream buffer in here that we're not allowed to clear cut.
Okay.
Well, yeah, it does say you're right, it does say native wildflower and grass seeding, which would lead you to believe that it's straight and flat.
It's been cut.
The intent is to do the grass and wildflower seed mix only in the areas that are excavated. And Scott is correct that we have that stream buffer zone that we cannot touch, and that all of the native planting in that area would remain. So I agree that the drawing needs clarification so that is so that's more clear.
And
Clarify the existing tree line too, Marty.
Yes.
So staff, on page 10 at the bottom, staff does state that the applicant needs to provide a more detailed landscape plan to show how compliance will be achieved on the southern boundary. So that's clear.
Mm-hmm.
There is a note in the paragraph above that, that there is a comment letter from the neighbor to the south, on the same side of the driveway, or the same size of the side of the development, that is asking for an extended buffer by 50 feet. That comment came up before when we did this 2 years ago. And that's something that I think the board would probably like to see.
We have no issue extending that buffer.
You didn't 2 years ago, and I can't imagine you would now.
So, I think that covers those three major components. So now I'll open it up to the board members to put forth any additional questions that you have. All right, I'll start.
Just bear with, yeah, go ahead, go for it.
I'll start. Mechanical equipment and dumpsters are required to be screened on the site. I was having a hard time, I can see where I think the dumpsters are. It says new concrete pad for trash and recycling, but it does not, I didn't see anything in here about screening of that. And of course, if that is since it's behind the fence, if the fence is a solid fence, that probably would count as a screening device. But it's not clear on these plans kind of what.
Right. Are you saying, John, they need to be screened in general or just screened from public view?
Screened from public view.
Screened from
Building
public view.
screens it. There's not any place
Matt, you want to weigh in on that?
that I can see.
You asked about specifically what item?
The dumpsters and mechanical equipment. But I'm looking at, I believe the dumpsters for the trash and recycling.
I'm assuming you're gonna have a generator, a big generator somewhere on site.
Yeah, the generator's down between the building and the lower parking lot on the west side.
So that'll need to be screened.
So, so the bylaw says 1672, they must be fully screened from public view.
Okay.
So we believe the dumpsters are screened from public view. The building screens them from Route 2A, and they are behind the building within the secure area, so public can't drive back there either.
Very good. As long as they can't be seen, and that's fine.
Right, yes. I think you might be able to stand up tight in the corner of the fence there and catch a glimpse of it, but I'm not going to worry about that.
There's a series of trees.
So, are there other pieces of equipment, mechanical equipment, that are on the site that I maybe didn't see as I looked here?
So if you look at C2, that's where our generator is. It's kind of toward the northwest of the monopole.
Yep.
With a transformer there.
Right. That one would be from the access drive visible. Is that correct?
There are a series of trees proposed sort of parallel to the parking lot between that equipment and the road.
You're gonna need to screen those.
Yeah,
The public parking lot drives right in, you can park right next to it.
That's private.
employee lot.
That's
That's
gated
employee
access.
Lower parking lot. You're still gonna,
I
you're
think,
still
I
gonna
don't
need
think
to
those
screen.
trees are gonna cut it, you know, in a moving vehicle as you drive through there, there'll be glimpses of that.
Fair.
Yeah.
We can provide additional screening at the transformer and generator.
Yeah, thank you.
I would suggest landscape screening.
I would appreciate that, that would be very nice. So guys, pipe right in if you have any questions.
I was wondering if we could bring up the picture of the antenna at the lower building, the existing building now, for a second. Thank you. So basically, if you get the tenants that you have on this existing antenna, the new antenna would have similar pop with cellular and other radomes on it.
I'm not sure what he said.
And so, like on this antenna right here, I'm assuming your, or on the pole, I'm assuming your microwave dishes are the white one right behind the line and the other one headed towards the transmitter site?
That would be my assumption. I'm not a radio person, but that would make sense.
And the rest of them above that are cellular?
That would be my assumption as well, yep. And then we have the Jericho Fire Department on there somewhere as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is that tower coming down once your new one is up?
We don't know yet. The talk is that once we get the new facility constructed and Vermont State Police moved over, that we will put it up for sale. Whether or not that's with or without the antenna, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Anything else there, Dave?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. I wanted to ask about the trail easement. And the report here states that you're unable to put that out there right now, or you're not able to, I wasn't clear on what you were or weren't able to do at this point, or why that is something that we can agree to.
If I may, Jeremy Stevens with BGS. We weren't able to promise a floating easement, but we were able to promise discussions for a future trail as long as it didn't impact operations of the proposed and future site. And I believe that, I can't remember exactly what the wording was of the statement that went in, but all that requires is contacting the BGS Commissioner, Jennifer Fitch, at the time you're ready to propose a location for that trail for discussion.
Okay.
Melinda, how are you, that's been your bailiwick for a while. How are you managing that? Or how does that sit within your requirements?
I think it's probably okay. They said they're good for their word, so I guess I'll trust that. And when and if, I mean, when this, I guess when my understanding was they wouldn't be able to do it as part of this project. But when the time comes, we can pursue conversation with BGS and go from there.
I think we'd be happy to talk about it more if you knew exactly where you wanted an easement to go, but the way it was proposed was a floating easement, and that wasn't something that that the state could agree to. So we continue to be willing to discuss the location of a future easement whenever you're ready to identify a location for that.
Okay, well, maybe as soon as this winter we can get out there and take a look.
I mean, it would be kind of nice to have, something identified, that obviously doesn't conflict with their needs, from their security. I mean, they've got security issues. So, but there seems like there's enough space on this property that you ought to be able to identify something and get it in writing or get it on paper so that, because if you don't, it's never going to happen.
Right. I think in discussions with the Conservation Commission, I think where we landed was having a trail go through the undeveloped portion of the property, even though it's pretty wet back there. But we'd have to do a site visit and kind of determine the feasibility of developing a trail somewhere back there. And, that site visit could take place, probably in the next couple months, maybe. So
I'm not sure how the message was delivered to you, or if it was delivered at all, but whether that decision from the town is made this winter or after we construct the facility, BGS is still committed to discussing a potential location. So it doesn't have to be now if you feel rushed, and we can put something in the conditions if you want. We've already committed to be willing to discuss that whenever you're ready. It doesn't happen now, or it can happen later.
I mean, sometimes what we've done is put a condition that says BGS will provide a draft or a commitment to provide a trail easement at a location to be mutually agreed upon between BGS and the town of Williston, something to that effect.
It doesn't sound like a problem at all.
Okay. We'll certainly be discussing then the wording of that condition in our deliberations. But thank you for your input and your flexibility on that.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I would just like to reiterate the way it was first proposed was a floating easement, and that was just a little bit too loose for the state.
Yep. I've noted that. That's fair enough. Everybody okay with the traffic study and traffic information that was presented?
Yeah.
Okay.
There was a note in here on parking about ADA spaces are sufficient, but the board might want to.
We'll move 2 and 2.
We're happy to even that up.
Thank you, great.
And again, I know this is going to sound really nitpicky, but it's the only time we have to bring this up. The bicycle parking is required at, I believe, 10% of the vehicular parking, in which case that puts us at 8.5, which I think means 9, and there's only 8 proposed. So we may want to put one more in there.
Add a bike spot.
The are you clear on what Public Works is requesting in terms of extending the water main?
I can continue to work directly with them on that. We did want to bring up that thought it was a little unreasonable to require a second hydrant here when we have one so close, and then there was only a water service beyond that. But I know that the board doesn't typically overrule public works on that.
You got it. It's up to you to figure that out.
So we'll work.
Right.
So I'll work.
And we make the comment without any comment as to whether we agree or disagree with.
We'll work with Lisa directly.
Yeah.
Okay,
Water meter issue, we're okay with.
all right.
And the stormwater comments were all reasonable. We'll adjust the
Good,
plans.
excellent. There was a question out there about the fencing material,
It's got all black vinyl.
black vinyl, so it'll be chain link. All the fencing is chain link?
Correct.
Okay, black vinyl, okay, great. This is what you get for putting in such a long, complete proposal. All right, I think we're getting down here. So I know this is a kind of a peripheral piece on the lighting, but I know there's security issues with the fenced-in storage area, but is there any perimeter lighting that's kind of triggered at the fence if somebody approaches that, or is it just on the motion sensors on the building lights? Because I noticed that the bylaw has some very specific requirements about what they call perimeter lighting.
We've got nothing on the fence that
Okay.
triggers if someone touches it.
Okay, exactly, that's exactly
Maybe a
right.
shot,
Okay,
maybe shot, but not lit up.
right. So, yeah, it talks about lighting that's triggered by intruders and whatnot, so.
The idea was there's enough lighting to
Motion.
it's all motion sensed.
Okay. All right, so I guess we'll give the board, if you think of any more questions, one more chance, a little bit. Right now, I'd like to open this up to anybody in the audience who has any questions or for the applicant.
We've got, Mr. Chair, we've got 3 members of the public on Zoom. I'm not seeing anyone raising their hands to ask questions. And we've also got a member of the public in the audience here with us tonight. I don't think he's intending to speak. And there's nothing in the chat.
Okay. They're speechless. All right, so I guess I'll throw this right back at the board, one last chance. Paul, anything from you?
No, I'm good.
You're good. David?
I'm good.
Scott?
All set.
And I think I've exhausted my comments as well. So any last pieces that you'd like to?
No, thank you for your time.
All right. Well, before I close this, I know there was one question out there about the landscaping plan and additional information on that. I'm trying to think how we get that information to us in time, or
You want to make it so that they can revise their landscaping plan and submit it to staff for their approval.
I think that's something else, yeah, probably that we should do that to submit a revised landscaping plan to staff, and whether we want to bring that back to us or not.
If you're going to bring it back to us, then you got to continue it.
Well, you can retain, in other words, you can decide not to defer review of final plans to staff, which means we would bring them back to you to see, and you could condition that final plans must include added detail on, I believe it was retention of the existing vegetation on that southern boundary. Or if you want to see that added detail as part of your discretionary permit review, as Scott said, you would need to continue the hearing to a date certain where you thought you could get that information.
Right. I think we can condition this adequately to allow you to resubmit those to
staff.
To staff.
That would be wonderful.
That would be my opinion.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Put the onus on Matt.
I'm gonna make Melinda do it.
Okay.
She wrote the whole staff report. I'm just the warm body in the room.
I'm gonna make Emily do it.
Got it.
Kick the can.
So, all right, well, thank you all. One last chance for anybody to make any comments before I close this. This is an important project. We've all been working on it for a long time. Great. I'm going to close this hearing at 8:40. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, appreciate it.
So the board will now be going into a deliberative session.
For Zoom attendees, I will now place you in the waiting room during deliberations.
Recording stopped.
You'll be let back in afterwards. The
welcome back. Coming out of deliberative session at 9:18. And do I have a motion for DP 20-15, Mezuzan? Oops, no. David's stuck. And Paul's not in there.
You're waiting on him, right?
I am. I'm waiting on David. So we're going to take a short break while we fix some technical difficulties here.
David, you there?
Paul, are you there?
He's blinking.
Maybe he can't hear us. David? Dave, can you hear us? I'd say you cannot. Emily, can you hear us?
No.
I would say that's a no as well. All right. Now I'm back on the screen.
Oh, I see the video feed now. It looks like town meeting TV just needs to unmute.
All right. Dave and Emily, can you hear us now?
I can see John talking, but the mute symbol is still on for town meeting TV.
There we go.
All right. Is that better?
Yep, we can hear you.
Great. All right, we'll try this again. We'll come out of deliberative session at 9:20, and I am looking for a motion on DP 20-15, the Mezuzan project.
As authorized by WDB 6.6.3, I, David Turner, move the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all accompanying materials, including the recommendations, the town staff, and the advisory board required to comment on this application, at the public hearing of October 26, 2021, accept the findings of fact and conclusions of law for DP 20-15 and approve the discretionary permit subject to the conditions of approval above. This approval authorizes the applicant to file final plans, obtain approval of these plans from staff, and then seek administrative permit for the proposed development, which must proceed in strict conformance with the plans on which this approval is based.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Scott Riley seconds it. So we'll do this by roll call. So aye or nay? Scott Riley.
Aye.
David Turner.
Aye.
Paul Christensen.
Aye.
And John Hemmelgarn is an aye. So it's 4 ayes, no nays, motion passes. Do I have a motion for DP 20-13, Vermont Department of Buildings and General Services?
As authorized by WDB 6.6.3, I, Scott Riley, move that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all accompanying materials, including the recommendations of the town staff and the advisory boards required to comment on this application by the Williston Development Bylaw, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at the public hearing of October 26, 2021, accept the findings of fact and conclusions of law for DP 20-13, and approve this discretionary permit subject to the conditions of approval above. This approval authorizes the applicant to file final plans, obtain approval of these plans from staff, and then seek an administrative permit for the proposed development, which must proceed in strict conformance with the plans on which this approval is based. We have made a couple of changes to the conditions of approval. Emily, if you can have them on the screen, there they are. Conditions of approval 2A1 will read, the applicant will work with the Conservation Commission to provide a trail easement location connecting the existing trail easement to Route 2A. final plan shall include a commitment letter if easement is to be determined at a future date. Next is condition 3, 1, excuse me, 3 I guess is what it would be. Emily, backing up, if you scroll up just a little bit, this is still condition number 2. Okay, so we are condition 2A 3II. To avoid impacts to the buffer, vegetation management must be restricted to the absolute minimum necessary, open parentheses, 14 feet or less, clothes parentheses, to maintain the security fence. Next is, again, it is condition 2A4. The applicant must submit a landscape plan in compliance with the standards of chapter, scroll down a little bit, Emily. Up, other way. There it goes. Chapters 23 and 34. We have struck the last sentence. Okay. This is great. What condition is that?
This is 2D.
Is that condition, okay, is that still condition 2?
2D4.
2B4?
D.
2D4.
The HAC recommends that the outdoor lighting levels be modified as follows. Employee parking, open parentheses, blue, close parentheses, colon, lighting shall be dimmed by 275, excuse me. Let's try that again. Lighting shall be dimmed to 75% from dusk till dawn, and then the sentence goes on from there. Scrolling down, security lighting area, open parentheses, red, close parentheses, colon, the storage area shall be dimmed to 75% during night hours, and the sentence goes on from there, unchanged. Next section of this condition, all pole-mounted fixtures, open parentheses, labeled SA, close parentheses, on the south side of the public parking lot and storage area. Sentence goes on from there, unchanged. Okay, what are we doing with that? Or Emily, did you?
Just adding in 98 Boulder Drive, the abutting residential properties.
Okay, scroll up again.
That's in the same area.
It's the same one, right? So to comply with WDB 22.7, select a different style, fixture style, or add a shield on the south side of the fixture to prevent light trespass and glare onto the abutting residential properties at 98 Boulder Drive, 3348 St. George Road, and then there's a parcel ID. Okay, and condition number 7, we are adding the sentence, applicant shall submit revised landscaping plans at the final plans that extends the arborvitae hedge to the west, open parentheses, see highlight in image below, close parentheses, and identifies existing landscaping to be retained along the southern boundary. Condition number 15, we are adding a sentence that says the transformer and generator shall be screened with landscaping to soften the view from the public access road. And finally, condition number 22, we are adding a sentence to the end of the condition stating the pole and antenna shall be painted a matte sky gray.
Thank you, Scott. Do I have a second on this motion?
I'll second it.
David Turner seconds it. Any discussion? Good. So, aye or nay? Scott Riley.
Yay.
David Turner.
Aye.
Paul Christensen.
Aye.
John Hemmelgarn is also aye. That's 4 ayes, 0 nays. Motion passes. All right, so the next agenda item, communication, other business. I know of none. So, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of October 12th, 2021?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of October 12th, 2021 as written.
I'll second it.
Scott Riley seconds it. David Turner made the motion. All in favor? Say aye.
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 Any opposed? We have 4 ayes, 0 nays. Minutes are approved. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
No, I want to keep going. We had a lot of fun.
Thank you, guys.